Gentlemen, this is one of those interesting conversations regarding hardware. If there's one thing that we can all admit, and the numbers are out there, folks, is every quarter that Xbox has to put out their numbers to investors, they have been down in console sales. They've slowed down production of Xbox Series X and S consoles. I think it's a mistake, especially when the industry, as we know, is moving away from the PS4, the PS4 Pro, and both versions of the old Xbox One, both the Xbox One and the newer models. We see that happen with NCAA. We're seeing it. It's going to happen with GTA 6. It's happened with quite a few of the EA games, and it's going to be a trend that's going to be moving forward. More third-party developers are not going to develop games for the old generation of consoles. And again, we're coming in on the 5th year of the current gen. It's probably about time, right? But Sean Layden, and again, we mentioned this in the beginning, but I really want to spend a few minutes kind of going into the actual hardware quote. And I want to reread the article from GameSpot.com. It was written on August 14th, which is yesterday. It was written by Eddie Makuch. So, of course, I forgot to mention that in the beginning. I will have this article in the show notes. So if you want to click on it, by all means, please do. So you can read it for yourself. And the quote of the day for me personally was comparing the current Xbox to what happened with the Dreamcast. And Crispy Bomb brought up a phenomenal point. You're comparing what happened in early 2000, because it released in 1999. It's probably not only one of my favorite releases of all time, but they had the best launch lineup in gaming history. I bought every game. It was astounding how many games were available at launch, and they were all killer experiences. And unfortunately, in the early 2000s, I think it was 2001 when it officially just died off, it went away. Sega left the hardware business. We were all saddened. Bad decisions. The Dreamcast was way ahead of its time. It really was. And Crispy's point about taking what happened in 2000, let's just say, for instance, for shits and giggles, 2001, right? Well, we're in 2025. That's 24 years ago, right? It's how do you compare what's happening with Xbox, who is winning on all accounts except for hardware? Now, their move away from hardware, or at least traditional hardware, is because of the industry as a whole, right? They understand, if Phil has said it publicly, that they lost the worst generation to lose, and that was the start of the digital libraries. So how do they pivot, ladies and gentlemen? Well, they pivot where they allow for you as the gamer to choose. Instead of you coming to Xbox to play a game, Xbox is bringing their wares to you. Does that matter? Does platform matter anymore? It does not. Now, we haven't seen the full shift to Nintendo Switch 2. That is apparently happening at some point. But right now, it's PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox. Right? So if you want to play a specific game, you can play it on your console of choice that it's been released on. And we saw that Microsoft is basically shifting everything over at one point or another. You can play on your console of choice. You can play on your PC. You can play on your handheld of choice, and there's a lot of them. You can play on your TV, right? Grab a controller, pop it on, link it, play, go. You can play it on your tablet. You can play it on your phone using your backbone. Hell, you don't even need the backbone if you don't want. You can literally just play on your phone. So the way that Xbox is attacking the hardware failure for the company is they have shifted in ways where you don't need their hardware. Now, is that a detriment? That's up for debate, right? That would be a 5-hour podcast, and we don't know if we'd even get to the answer. But what came to be a part of this conversation was his suggestion that Xbox is going to completely just get out of the hardware business. And again, based on what we read, he says that they're at a fork in the road of where Dreamcast was. I think he's 1,000% wrong, Crispy Bomb. I think that we've already had Sarah Bond last year talk about the new hardware coming for the next generation is going to be the most powerful hardware they've ever had. We know that they're going to have their own handheld. And again, it's rumored to be a dockable handheld. I want to get your thoughts on this ridiculous theory that Xbox is somewhere even remotely close to where Sega Dreamcast was, and why he's wrong, because the heads of the company have said that they have a hardware coming out. How does he challenge that? He's been out of the business for many, many years. I think he's wrong. I want to get your thoughts.
Bringing up Sega, like, brings me to a place that just they botched it. They destroyed their own brand. And we're talking, we'll go 24 years, as Boom said. Like, Dreamcast died when Saturn botched. They botched it. Okay, bad. And the only reason why I can say this, because I was a Blockbuster kid. And I had a Blockbuster down the road. And I watched PlayStation grow into a whole entire aisle and half of the aisle. And this little smidgen was the Saturn. Okay. And then I go and say, man, what is Saturn doing wrong? That, what do I got to play? Virtua Fighter? Do I play, some game that was kind of, irrelevant at the time? All these things. Like probably one of the best, and I will say this on Saturn's defense, one of the best games I ever played was Black Hawk Down. It was better than PlayStation, but you look at all those games that are next to the Saturn little section and you say, yeah, dude, like there's too much. Why don't I have a PlayStation? You know what I mean? And I guess that's the old school part that I look at. And I say, why are you bringing up something that, it's nostalgic to me, but at the same time, Sega chose what they chose. I've watched Peter Morris say, like, I didn't do what I should have done at that time. Okay.
They raced to the industry to try and get ahead of PlayStation, and their rushing is what doomed them.
So we look at the landscape right now. There's a constant battle still, which is hilarious because I have a Series X, and I'm gonna tell you right now, every game that I have on the Series X, and maybe I really hope there's some PlayStation gamers, not stands. Go look up what stand means right now because it's in the Urban Dictionary right now, and it's basically a fanboy that can't has to ignore things that are actually happening. And if you look at it, you say, how is Microsoft different? How is Xbox? We're in the Microsoft realm. I'll be honest with you. Like the OEM console thing, that's going to happen. Okay. But the one thing I'll tell you is they don't mind taking some of that share themselves and releasing their own console. And this is where the Windows thing that, I mean, they basically told us, like, they're going Windows, okay? If they pull it off for next year, because next year is like a huge year. It's huge, okay? As far as Xbox in general, it is absolutely astronomical, okay? The entire brand identity between Gears, Halo, just the console coming out, everything else, it's hitting milestones that most people said they were dead, 3 years ago? So I don't know. I feel like they're going to come out with something that's reasonably priced, but they're going to allow partners that, are in bed with AMD as well. Say, maybe we could put out something that's a little more crazy. And the one thing that people forget, and I guess I'm just like one of those memory people, the entire Microsoft ecosystem has always wanted a box in your living room. They always have. They've always wanted. PlayStation challenged them, and that's why they got into the console business to begin with. People forget these things. But in realism, go look back to anything that Xboxes or Microsoft has put out about the console business. They want a PC in your living room. Okay? And I'll tell you right now, if you give me a decently powered, able to play Steam games, because this is where like Sean Layden's like off the hinges, like doesn't understand how many thousands of games come to Steam all the time because these smaller developers are allowed to do it. Isn't that interesting? $10. Hey, they'll take it. They don't care. And if you like that game, they're going to support you. They're going to talk to you probably because they just want you to be engaged. These are the things that happen that maybe someone like myself don't see. Luckily, I have a young kid that, just he does what he wants on PC, and I see it, and he enjoys everything he plays, and like it community based, like all these, he'll have one screen with Discord, the other screen, and he'll be listening to the Discord chat or whatever else. It's a different time, people. And this man is not worthy of speaking of this time. Now, maybe I'm not either, but I will tell you this. I don't ignore enjoyment. I don't ignore what people feel. And what people feel right now is that Xbox is going into a different stratosphere. They're saying enough's enough. We can do what we want. We just need to create the ecosystem within Xbox across all these different devices. If they do that, Sony's screwed. And I will be with King David when that happens. But until then, I will say this. Sony has a out. They can release games on Xbox and have people gravitate towards them. And then if they want to sell a console again, which it don't sound like it, by the way, if they do, they have the ability, but they don't have the money that Microsoft has. And the only thing I'll give them is like, even when the Outer Worlds 2 thing came out, and everybody we were all against it. The $80 thing, we were all against it. Okay. And at the end of the day, they dropped it. So how long are they going to drop it? We don't know. I mean, you got shareholders in the back end, but when you're that big of a company, you shouldn't care, honestly. I mean, Sony, in Microsoft are not even on the same level. They're not. Okay. But we still get Game Pass, which I'm still surprised because, like Mixer, I loved Mixer. I love being able to do what I did. Even the Windows Phone, I had a friend that had it, and it was pretty amazing because I was used to Windows. Okay. These are things that they've destroyed, absolutely like obliterated in stupidity, in my opinion, but it was reactionary because a lot of these things happened after 2013. And 2013 hurt Microsoft. Okay. And as Phil said, people built their digital libraries during that period of time. And they didn't know what would come after. And unfortunately, Microsoft, they botched it. That's okay. Take the L. But guess what? Microsoft's like, you could play it on your phone. See, here's the thing that people ignore. Why are they making so much money? Are people just downloading Game Pass onto their phone or onto their TV and not buying the console? Is that a possibility? Oh, I think it is. And I've seen it. And I say, wait for it, because when it happens, when you have an OEM that's like $1,200 but has all the graphical fidelity, and if you want to go buy it, go right ahead. Or you get a Series S like console that's reasonably priced at $400 at that point in time when we get to these new released consoles.
Crispy, you specifically made mention of Xbox doing something different and giving people choice. I think that what you're talking about is this new OEM device that's going to come out. It's probably going to be expensive, right? And what we all believe is going to happen is subsidization is not going to be a thing for places like Asus. Now, could Sony do it still? Sure. I don't believe they are going to do it. I think their console, whatever it's going to be, the PS6, whatever you want to call it, is going to be $600, $700, $800, $900. Same thing with the same thing could be said about Xbox, but Xbox might be in a position where they can come out with something and subsidize it. Now, do I believe it's going to be as much as they subsidized the Series X and S? I don't think so. And someone like Hargeet believes that is going away altogether. I don't necessarily know. But what Xbox is doing differently, Fuzzy Belvedere, is it's going to be an open source box. So it is not going to be a closed ecosystem box like the PlayStation 6 is expected to be. The PlayStation 6 is going to be a very powerful console. There is no arguing that. But it's going to be just a PlayStation 5 with a new number and more power. It is going to play Sony's games, and that is it outside the third party. It is not going to play something from Steam or Good Old Games or Epic Game Store. And that changes the game. And you know what? I want to bring up specifically the conversation between GameSpot and Derek Strickland. So Derek Strickland, again, he's the owner of Tweaktown. He responded to the GameSpot posting or the article, and where the article said Xbox at a Sega-like fork in the road and may stop making consoles, ex-PlayStation boss Sean Layden says. Okay, Sean's entitled to his opinion, but Sean is wrong. He's wrong for 1,000 reasons. Well, Derek Strickland's response, both responses are pretty pointed. The first one says, Sega didn't make billions of dollars from live service games, subscriptions, and digital content that can and has subsidized console manufacturing. He's 1,000% right. But his other point, his follow-up point, is even better. He says, I also have to reiterate this point. Xbox console users are the most embedded / entrenched gamers on Microsoft's games platform. Any hardware deviation will need to be handled over time in parentheses, years to migrate the disastrous losses that would occur from such a thing. So obviously, he's suggesting that if they just stopped making consoles, it would be disastrous. And you know what? Here's where my common sense degree comes into play, ladies and gentlemen. Is Xbox Game Pass available on PlayStation as of today or Nintendo Switch 2? The answer is, of course, no. And it's unlikely it would ever be there. So if Xbox were to stop making consoles, what would they do with the potential 35 million subscribers? And if you really want to get to the brass tacks of it, let's just say for shits and giggles that you knock off 10 million are on PC. That still leaves you with 25 million customers. So what are you going to say? Stay with the old hardware and you're good while we're getting our lunch handed to us by everyone else that's got new hardware? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And to make matters even more damning for his stupidity, and that's right, I called Sean Layden stupid because his opinions are just that. You had Sarah Bond, who is the president of Xbox, come out and tell you to your face that not only are they going to have the most powerful hardware that the company's ever put out, but there's going to be multiple pieces of hardware. And I'm not talking about in 2024. I'm talking about as soon as the June showcase where she talked about future hardware. So she is, again, these are people in prominent positions that not only have to answer to the Satya Nadellas of the company and the Amy Hoods of the company, but they have to answer to the publicly traded people that are investing billions of dollars of their money into this company, and they would be literally lying and held liable for doing so. Again, I think Sean was a great PlayStation representative. I think he's someone either looking for work or trying to stay relevant by being idiotic publicly, because that's ultimately what this is based on what I've already said. And I can go deeper, pause. But Fuzzy, I'm going to get your thoughts on this, man. Hardware going away versus the difference of what Xbox is doing as opposed to the standard Nintendo Switch 2 and the potential PlayStation 6.
Okay, so there's a lot more to the hardware aspect when it comes to Xbox in general. Like, I think the thing that people overlook, I mean, sure, there's somewhere around 35 million Series X and S consoles. But there's still a lot, just like on PlayStation, there's still a lot of previous generation console users that are in the ecosystem. Now, the key difference between people on Xbox One versus people on PS4, the people on PS4 are stuck with only games that are cross-gen. So anything that's still being made for the PS4, which every day we find more and more of the newer games are leaving the last generation behind, they're kind of stuck on that end. But on Xbox's side, there is that alternative with having Game Pass Ultimate that you're able to still use your Xbox One to play current gen games on that older hardware through streaming. And that's something that PlayStation doesn't offer. So while there may be 30 to 35 million series consoles out there, there's still probably another 30 to 35 million plus of the Xbox One customers that are still buying games, that are more than likely still subscribed through Game Pass to be able to have that option to stream the newer style games without having to buy the newer hardware. But Xbox is going to still make that hardware. It's just that they're going to continue allowing you to have the older hardware. So if you're not quite ready to make that leap from the series console to the the hybrid PC console next gen, you'll more than likely still be able to play some of those games through Game Pass Ultimate or whatever other tier that they may create to have Steam as an included outlook type of thing. So they're going to stay in the hardware business for a good bit of time. Like the reporter was saying, they would have to transition a lot of those users over to whatever that next platform is that's going to be their foot in the door to get them to still spend money in the store or spend money as far as with the subscription. So I don't foresee them leaving the hardware business next generation or the generation after that. But then again, we can't really see that far in the future. Like I honestly believe by, I would say, the end of this next generation coming up, a lot of people won't be on console. And I've said it before. I predict at some point your console will be no more than what the controller is. It'll have all the
Great
innards
point.
of what a console, what you would need for a console that's as powerful as they are today. They'll be able to fit in that controller, and you'll be able to play your games through your TV that way. But that's me just kind of predicting something in the future. Who knew that we would have the type of consoles that we have, let's say 10 years ago, or that we'd be able to have cloud streaming stuff, 10 years ago, like with GeForce Now level type streaming, fidelity and so forth. So I I don't see them leaving the hardware business primarily because that's one, their biggest foot in the door. Two, when Phil talks about like the Xbox customers, and it's funny that people always say Xbox customers don't buy games. They're making a ton of money off of the Xbox consumers in the ecosystem by either buying software, which Microsoft being the software company that they are, I would have to believe that some of that is true within what Phil was saying, that more than likely, if you're subscribed to Game Pass, you're buying the season passes or you're buying the DLC because you figure you're saving the money and not buying the $70 or $80 game. You're spending it in other ways. Plus, you're more likely to buy the games that are not in the service or that will likely not come to the service while still being subscribed to the service. So you have access to hundreds, if well, roughly close to 1,000 games, especially when you look at the Play Anywhere aspects of things within the service, and then the games that usually don't go in the service that you would wind up buying outright type of deal. So I think they're going to continue making hardware, even if that future is just the console being this controller. That's what they'll more than likely do for, I would say, the next 10, 15, 20 years plus, just because that's the easiest way to get their consumer hooked into the ecosystem, staying subscribed, buying more content, buying more add-ons or accessories or microtransactions and such. Because it's better when you make 100% of the money within your store, especially on your first party stuff, or the 30% on third party stuff. If you're not making the hardware, then you're at the mercy of whoever else's hardware that person is on. Now, they are making the 70% on any of their PlayStation customers when they put the games over there, or the 70% that they'll make off of Switch customers when they put games over there as well. But in the grand scheme of things, you always want that 100%, especially if you're going to be the size publisher that they are these days. They're one of the biggest, if not the biggest publisher when it comes to being in the gaming industry. So they're going to want to continue to have that bigger cut within their own house. And they're always going to want to have that house for that reason. But I don't know why they keep on thinking that, changing hardware or getting rid of hardware. Sure, they'll be fine selling software, but that getting that 100% within their own, storefront is going to be what's going to make the big difference for them. That's easier money that they can quantify, easier money that they can rely on with the subscription, the recurring revenue and stuff from that. I don't know why it's so hard for Sean Lane to visualize that. Like, he was all about the PlayStation Store doing something similar where their first party in their store is making 100% of that money. Why would he think that Xbox would be any different?